So, hi everyone, and welcome. It's great to have you with us today. In our session today, it's all about how to close the OEE gap in pharma. My name is Manuel, and I'm really happy to be joined by Zen-Zen and Max Stebner. Before we get started, just a quick note. Today's session will run for about 30 minutes, so we'll make sure that you're ready for your lunch break on time. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A section at any time. We will go through them at the end of the session. So with that, I would say let's get started. Sen and Max, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Maybe Max, you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my name is Max. I'm with eschbach now for quite some years, I think 7 at the time. Currently in the position of product manager for the Shift Connector OEE solution.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm Zen-Zen. I'm the industry principal Pharma at eschbach. So I'm taking care of our pharma customers and those who want to be pharma customers in the future. And before joining eschbach, I have been with Bayer for around about 10 years, mostly in engineering roles. And in my last role, I was responsible first for the maintenance, and then I was engineering director of one of our production sites. So hopefully I can share some insights from that one with you as well today. And then with no further ado, let's dive into the topic, closing the OEE gap in pharma. And we were really happy to see such a big number of registrations and also, of course, like people joining now this session. It really just shows how much more important efficiency and OEE has become in the recent years. And the drivers for the increasing need for higher efficiency and higher OEE, I would say, are very diverse. Like on one side, we have a huge capacity growth in the sterile business, but also beyond that, of course, which can really be seen here in a study that was conducted by McKinsey a few years ago. But what we really see is we have a higher capacity that was driven by a higher demand. What we can also see is that, and this is a study that was conducted by ISPE. So ISPE does do a state of the industry with regards to digital transformation as a survey every year with the pharmaceutical companies. And what we can really see as a second driver is that we have a big portion of digital transformation projects started, like the share of companies that has not yet started any digital transformation project is really decreasing. And then, of course, last but not least, the geopolitical issues, the challenges that we currently see. So really a increase in pricing pressure, not just because of the tariffs, but also, of course, because of, well, the pricing policy we see in the US. So really not only focusing on China anymore, that was always really a big topic for pricing, but also for the American market now, which is the biggest market for the pharmaceutical industry. So talking about efficiency, identified 3 drivers, right? We talked about capacity, we talked about digital transformation, and we talked about cost pressure or price decreases, like pricing pressure. What does that have to do with OEE? So really, when we're talking about higher efficiency, OEE is the KPI that we should measure because it factors in, of course, the availability, the performance, and the quality. We will learn more about that from Max in a second. But really thinking about the 3 drivers we had, why is OEE important right now? Why is efficiency more important? Like, if you look into the capacity growth, if you would see, for example, a demand increase in one of your products, having like building new capacity, buying a new line or building a new facility will take you around about 2 to 3 years, right? So really you will only get any results from that in like long period of time, so 2 to 3 years. While when you increase OEE, you could maybe even double your capacity, or at least have 30% increase without any further capex investment. Also, like a big question is, of course, the other chance that you can have is you build up a new shift, right? So if your production is not yet running 24/7, one of the opportunities you have for higher capacity demand, for higher demand, would be to increase the amount of shifts, meaning hiring a additional shift. But of course, we all know with the current situation in the job market, it will take you a long time to hire even these people. And this is not even factoring in the training efforts you will have to do on there. So really there, this is also not a super fast solution. And then, of course, all of these two opportunities will not give you any flexibility, right? Like having a new facility will also increase the cost. Having a new shift will also increase the cost. So really the question is also, how can I be agile enough to meet changing demands in the future? And then, of course, like before we dive really into what you can do, we also want to show you the gap that is currently there, right? Because we're talking about closing the OEE gap, and you could ask yourself, which gap are we even talking about? So you saw the 75% already on the slide before, and this is really the average of what we can see with some of our chemical customers. So really if you're working in pharma, a dream number of an OEE, right? On the left side, you can see the current state of the pharmaceutical industry. So this is a result from a benchmarking study, a very famous benchmarking study, where even the top performers are only at 94%. Wait, 94%. 49%, sorry. And the average is around 30%. But really what you can also see there is that like even for the top performers, there is still a huge opportunity, but really the gap between the bottom performers and the high performers is absolutely like large. So before we go into the steps, I would like to hand over to Max to give us a little bit more of an explanation about what OEE actually is.
Thank you. So yeah, let's build some common ground first. So OEE basically translates to the overall equipment effectiveness, and it bases itself on the three areas of factors called availability, performance, and quality. If we look at these three factors, we can pretty easily recognize that these are the areas where your operational team can have an active influence on, right? So OEE is really the, let's say, shop floor effectiveness KPI for measuring your effectiveness. Each of the three factors, availability, performance, and quality, they come with a typical set of common losses, and I just have listed a few of them below. Just keep those in mind for the next slides, and just try to reflect a little bit on where you could recognize these issues and then common losses in your production. So, as announced, we will talk today about 5 moves to boost your OEE, and that basically should help you in your mission to get more effective in your production environment. And I would say let's just start right into the first one. So the real-time production data, that's basically the baseline of any OEE methodology, right? So we want to also put some emphasis on the importance of real-time production data, but it is not everything that is to it. So we also have to put it into perspective a little bit. A common misconception is that having more data always means also having better data. But in reality, what shows is that the best data that there is basically the data that you can actually use today, right? So when it comes to OEE and other data-driven reporting initiatives, it's important to understand what the ideal 100% solution might look like in the future. However, delaying an implementation until you have that 100% of the required data available can be rather counterproductive. So simply put, leverage the data you already have today and try to deliver it to the key stakeholders as quick as possible. To really implement a sustainable OEE solution over time, it is then also important to take the human knowledge into context and consideration and really connect it with the captured machine data. Achieving this requires a straightforward but also kind of effective HMI, so a human-machine interface, to enable an easy way for operators to actually put their knowledge on top of the machine data. But in the end, the contextualized data, this is really the key to enhancing your reports and taking them to the next level. As mentioned, you should rather start early with an implementation with not 100% of the data that you might require, because you can always expand your data flow and reports by integrating additional systems or data sources that will address more of your requirements in the future. So of course, start now, leverage the data that you have already, and of course, benefit from the data that you have already.
So now that we have real-time operations data, right, like we would be able, for example, to know automatically if our line is running, if the line is not running, or if there is a certain error message there, right? So that is absolutely brilliant. Do I have everything I need to improve my OEE now? And no, the answer is no, because really, like from my experience, we had that as well at my previous company, right? And have you ever tried to do an analysis just based on the real-time operations data or real-time production data? I have tried to do that, and basically what happened was after 2 weeks, we had this data, I looked into my machine, and it was absolutely brilliant in a sense that I could, of course, then see which was my worst performing line. Of every line, I could see which was my worst performing equipment. And then I go into that equipment, because of course I want to improve this, like I want to remove the failure code so I have a better OEE, right? So I go into this equipment and the only thing I see is like safety door open. So I had 2 weeks of data. I could see my biggest like loss at this production line was that the safety door is open. And now what? I could do absolutely nothing with that. I could go through my shift logbooks, of course, to see if I can make any sense of that, if something happened. But really, I had the idea that with that data, I can now do everything, but I really couldn't do anything without human insights. So really, like bringing that data also to the people, like showing them on the shop floor and then getting that loss contextualization is a super important step. Like, of course, start with whatever you have, with the data you have, but make sure that you get the humans in this, that you get a good overview of what was the reason for the losses, what did they observe, and what did they, of course, also do, right? Like if you're working in a continuous improvement area, you don't have to find the solutions yourself, like build on what the operators know, what they observe on the shop floor, and yeah, what they are doing in their day-to-day work already. Having a real-time operation data, having human insights really builds up super nicely into one very, very important topic, like talking about humans, of course. We need to talk about a leadership topic as well. And this is the zero loss mindset. So you can have the best data, you can have all your people putting in a contextualization of the data, but really like we always need to ask ourselves what's next or what now? Like, does that help me now to reach my actual goal of a hopefully 90% OEE, right? And the zero loss mindset is really a leadership topic more than anything else. And for the zero loss mindset, what is really important is that, of course, the intention is shaping how we behave. And this is a little bit of a theory behind there. So there is a theory of planned behavior, which is guided by 3 different objects. So one is attitude, then it is subjective norm, and then it is perceived behavior control. And what that really means is if I want to have a culture in my company that does not accept any losses, right? So if you've been working like on the shop floor, a lot of times a thing that you could hear would be 5 minutes, that doesn't matter because we do, I don't know, 1 hour break every day. So like I can have 5 minutes loss, is not a problem, right? So really changing that culture into a zero loss mindset where you have everyone in that organization caring about 1 minute, 2 minutes, or even like 30 seconds is really the goal here. So, and to be able to establish that, it has to start with the leadership, and it has to shape the overall culture. So thinking about these 3 determinants of the intention, right? One is the attitude. So attitude means, how do I feel as a person about it? Do I think 5 minutes is a big deal or not? Do I always join 5 minutes late for a meeting or do I not, right? Then the subjective norm, like what does the group think? Do they think it's okay if I join 5 minutes late because everyone is doing that? Or do we not accept this, for example? And then, of course, the perceived behavioral control. So do the people feel capable and authorized to actually change something about it if this is the behavior we see? So really one tangible example we had, and this is really because I come from a maintenance background, right? For maintenance, it is very, very common that we always reward firefighting. So we always reward the person that stayed longer, that put in more effort to get us back up and running again. But really like shifting that mindset towards a behavior where we don't even accept that there's a downtime. We don't accept the firefighting. We reward if there was nothing to do. Like if everything is running smooth, it is great. This is what we need for production. This is maybe not necessarily in line with how we have behaved before. So really changing that mindset to a zero loss mindset is a very, very important part, and it is a leadership action. So with that.
Yes. So also having a look on root cause analysis and of course the elimination of recurring losses as a next topic. I think the key message that we should highlight here is really that only what is known to be imperfect can be improved. And that's just not just a sentence, there's really some meaning behind it. And a great example for that sticks to my memory from a previous implementation of our Shift Connector OEE solution was with a client where they basically, after documenting lost reasons for a while, understood that within their plant, every other night, there was like a breakdown in one of their feed pumps. And the funny thing about that is this was already happening for almost a year, and no one really cared about it because other than what Zen-Zen just told us with the zero loss mindset, they did not consider it anymore as a loss because it was just part of their day-to-day activities. Like we just have to restart the feed pump every other night. That's just how it is. So what I want to highlight with that example is really that you need to first recognize outliers in your production. You need to understand your data that you have available. And when you find those outliers or these patterns, you really need to dive into it and analyze it. You need to understand the root cause of it. And don't worry, I'm not telling you anything about the methodologies behind root cause analysis. I think you know that much better than I do. But what I want to get to is really that after you did your root cause analysis, you also need to make sure that you digitally document your results. Not only the results, but also the progress that you're making with the root cause analysis and all the activities that would come from it. Because only then you are creating kind of a buy-in also for the stakeholders and operators, maybe on the shop floor. Because if they understand what they're doing is actually causing or what influence they can have, there's a much higher chance that they will actively or proactively contribute to that continuous improvement mindset. So on the other hand, of course, if you digitally document all these progress that you make or the root causes of certain issues, you're also building a very, very powerful knowledge base that you can, of course, in nowadays use or leverage with the help of AI. So, for example, also within Shift Connector, we have AI functionality which is, for example, the smart search that I'm just showing here in a quick video, where based on NLP and your input search words, the whole Shift Connector instance is basically covered and scanned through to find certain records or similar issues of the past, and already gives you smart solutions of how you could handle these issues again, based on the findings that you had maybe a year ago already. So this is really just, again, a highlight here. Please not only do root cause analysis, also document it, make it available for future use, and therefore build a sustainable continuous improvement culture in your company.
Yeah, exactly. And it is so important. Like, I would have loved to have that, just to be able to go back and check what was done, and could that be a solution that helps me right now, right? But ideally, of course, where we want to go to is not that we have recurring issues, right? Like, we really want to do root cause like elimination. So making sure that this particular error cannot come back again. And what is really important for that part, and this is the last move, is make it your standard. So to really turn all of that knowledge you had gathered, all that information now into a digital, into a daily reality. Because what you see and what happens a lot, and this is also a little bit adding to what Max has just said, right? We do all these PDCAs, we see there's a loss, and a lot of times, of course, we have some type of sheet where we are doing the analysis on, and then for a certain amount of time, everyone is trained on maybe a new procedure, maybe a little thing that we will have to do differently to prevent this error. But after time, what you can see is, if you don't standardize it, and ideally, like, of course, you would standardize it in a digital way, but if you don't standardize it, what we can really see is that this efficiency is dropping back down again, because it just gets lost over time, especially if you think about like the change in workforce we have. So adding a standardization to your daily reality supports with staying up at the efficiency level that you want to be at. And I think with that, we come to the conclusion of the meeting. And of course, like, I don't know if you've added your questions already, but please put in the questions, and I hand over to Max again for the summary.
Of course, and just to go over all the 5 topics that we covered today again, starting with the real-time data, just to bring it up again, start to implement the data that you already have. It might be even as simple as having just a batch start or end trigger coming from an MES that could kick off a thought process, like in the example that I just brought up with the night shift. If you're noticing a certain delay in a recurring pattern, this might already spark kind of an idea or a reflection process that might bring you some efficiency boosts. And that also leads into the human insights, because if you already recognize these patterns in your data, then it would be also a great idea to just give your people a voice. Just consider what their knowledge is and what that can bring to your overall efficiency. As mentioned, it could be just a simple message from your people, like, we have to restart a pump every other night since almost a year. So like a normal phrase, which could spark really a great improvement process here. As a third topic, we had the zero loss mindset. And I think what Zen-Zen highlighted there is that you should really change your behavior and your mindset in the way of not the firefighting mode is what we want to reward, but really we want to celebrate the situations where we didn't have any losses. So we really want to avoid losses in the first place and not just react when they appear. For the cause identification and elimination, I think it's really just, again, making sure that you be transparent about your progress that you have. Also save the information that you're gathering, make it available, store it in a sustainable manner, and make it or make use of all the AI support that is available nowadays. And as the 5th move, as Zen-Zen mentioned, standardize. Don't only build the knowledge documents that can be found somewhere, build actionable steps, use the knowledge that you have to update your way of working. And it could be as simple as just standardizing a way of how the material is checked out, for example. It really removes uncertainty and it will bring efficiency boosts. So just to conclude the meeting, I think start now. Even the smallest steps make a difference. The last words from our side.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Zen-Zen and Max, for sharing these great insights. That was really interesting, and we have already received some questions during the session, so I would say let's jump right into the Q&A. So the first question from the audience touches on a topic that's on everyone's mind these days, so AI. The question is, how can AI help me during root cause analysis, and what kind of data does the AI need access to?
Let me take that maybe. So in general, the AI, just maybe with the example that I showed earlier, the AI can of course help you in the early phases of your root cause analysis, just like helping in a brainstorming session when you just face a recurring issue and you just kind of search for similar issues in the past, and it gives you already hints to what were the solutions back then. And maybe that already helps you to identify the root cause, or maybe it just gives you a hint that the root cause is basically somewhere else, but connects to multiple areas in your plant. So it's really, of course, in the beginning, a very powerful tool to get a root cause analysis going, but also in the end, it will be really helpful to just, as mentioned, feedback your results of the root cause analysis into the system, or therefore into the AI, to just make available for future root cause analysis again. And to the second part of the question, I think what wallet or what data is required for AI. So just from the example of the shift connector AI, the AI has basically access to all the data that is within your shift connector instance, within your shift connector solution. It will be also therefore trained with your actual production data, and it is not relying on any open source models in that case.
Okay, wonderful.
And maybe just to let me add to this real quick. I think nowadays, like, we have all seen already the power of AI, right? Like, we all know what it can do. We all know what comes out of it when we asked it its question. I think what is more important, especially in the pharmaceutical context, is like, can we trust this information, right? Like, are we sure that the solutions we maybe get, or the tips we maybe get recommended here are the right ones, and I should actually do that. So really pay attention to that, rather than just like taking all the suggestions out of an AI and just implementing that, right?
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Zen-Zen and Max, for that clarification. There's another question from the audience, and I think that is a very practical question. So, how can I calculate the OEE from the machine data, and which types of information are required?
Good question. So in general, the machine data that we're capturing is very, let's say, dynamic. For different process types, there are different requirements, but I think in general, you can say, if we stick with an example of a batch production, for us, it is just important to understand the start and the end date time of a batch, of course, to understand where and how long these productions were running. And this will be then held against the reference times of your recipes, basically. So for this specific product on this specific process cell, you need to kind of produce the batch within a certain time. And everything that exceeds that time is, for us, an identified loss. And based on these losses, of course, the OEE is then calculated. There is a pretty standard calculation for the OEE, but of course, whenever there is already a methodology in place at your companies, these methodologies can be adopted within Shift Connector OEE as well.
Okay, great. So thank you. So all right, so we have already session is almost over, so that brings us to the end of the session. Big thank you to you, Zen-Zen and Max, for sharing your insights. You will receive after this session the recording link, so you can rewatch or share it with your colleagues. And if there are any further questions or unanswered questions, please contact us at any time. So as you can see on that last slide, everything we talked about is part of our intelligent operations platform, the Shift Connector. So if you have any further questions about the webinar or Shift Connector, feel free also reach out directly to Zen-Zen and or Max. Their contact details are on the slide, and they are always happy to help. Yeah, last but not least, thank you to all of you for joining. And as promised, you're right on time for lunch. So have a great day and later on a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.